My mother kicked me out of the house, and I didn't speak to her for 10 years. Then my brother called. Chapter 1. Broken ties. The Boston summer air hung heavy with humidity as 17-year-old Emma Matthews slammed her bedroom door. The family. Photos on the wall rattling in protest. Outside, cicadas buzzed in the maple trees that lined their suburban street, oblivious to the storm brewing inside the two-story colonial home. Emma could hear her mother's footsteps approaching, each thud against the hardwood floor matching the pounding of her heart. "Emma, open this door right now." Catherine Matthews' voice carried that unmistakable tone, the one that had once made Emma feel safe but now felt like a prison. "We are not done discussing this. If you're enjoying this story about family conflict and reconciliation, hit that subscribe button now. Stories like these about real human connections are what this channel is all about." "There's nothing to discuss," Emma shouted back, frantically stuffing clothes into her backpack, tears blurring her vision. On her nightstand sat a framed photo of her and Jason at the winter formal, his varsity jacket draped over her shoulders, snowflakes caught in her dark hair. 6 months of secret meetings, stolen kisses behind the bleachers, and late-night text messages had culminated in her mother, discovering them together in the living room when she came home early from her nursing shift. The doorknob rattled. "Emma Elizabeth Matthews, that boy is 21 years old. You're just a child. I forbid you from seeing him again. Do you understand me?" "I'm not a child." Emma's voice cracked. "I love him, and he loves me. You don't understand because you're too busy working to even care about my life." The sudden silence on the other side of the door was more terrifying than the yelling. Emma could picture her mother's face, the hurt spreading across her features, the way her shoulders would slump slightly before her nurse's posture kicked back in. Catherine Matthews had raised Emma and her younger brother Ethan alone since their father walked out 10 years ago. Double shifts at Boston Memorial Hospital had put food on the table but left little time for heart-to-hearts. "Emma?" Her mother's voice was quieter now. "Please open the door. Let's talk about this rationally." But rational was the last thing Emma felt as she slid open her window, the summer air rushing in. Jason was waiting 2 blocks away in his beat-up Camaro. They had it all planned out. His cousin had an apartment in Chicago. They could stay there until they figured things out. Emma was sure this was love, the kind worth fighting for, worth leaving everything behind for. As she climbed down the trellis, backpack slung over her shoulder, she heard her bedroom door finally open. Her mother's gasp cut through the evening air. "Emma! Don't you dare!" Their eyes met across the distance. Her mother leaning out the window, face flushed with panic, and Emma standing on the lawn below, one foot already pointed toward her future. "If you leave this house, don't bother coming back." The words exploded from Catherine's mouth, hanging in the humid air between them. Emma felt her heart crack but steeled herself. "Fine," she whispered, then louder. "Fine. I don't need you anyway." As Emma ran down Maple Street, the weight of her decision pressed against her chest. Behind her, she could hear her mother calling her name, the sound growing fainter with each step. Her little brother Ethan's face appeared at his bedroom window, confused and frightened. Emma turned away, unable to bear the sight. What would you have done in Emma's position? Leave a comment below, sharing a time when you faced a difficult choice between family and following your heart. The last thing Emma heard as she rounded the corner was her mother's voice, breaking with emotion. "Emma, please, come back." But she didn't look back. Jason's car idled at the curb, radio playing some pop song about eternal love and never looking back. As she slid into the passenger seat, the leather hot against her bare legs, Emma made a silent promise to herself. She would prove her mother wrong. She would show everyone that she and Jason were meant to be, that this wasn't just some teenage rebellion. "You okay, babe?" Jason asked, his hand finding hers. Emma nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat as they pulled away from the only home she'd ever known, watching it disappear in the side mirror. "Just drive," she whispered. "Just drive." Chapter 2. 10 Years of Silence. The Chicago winter wind whipped around Emma Matthews as she hurried up the steps to her apartment, balancing groceries in one arm while fumbling for her keys with the other. At 27, she'd built a life for herself. A small but comfortable apartment in Wicker Park, a job as a graphic designer at a marketing firm, and a circle of friends who knew nothing about the family she'd left behind in Boston. Jason had lasted exactly 8 months before the reality of supporting a teenage girlfriend while working at his uncle's auto shop had soured the romance. Emma had found herself alone in a strange city, too proud to go home, too stubborn to admit her mother might have been right. She'd waited tables, earned her GED, put herself through community college, and eventually landed a job that utilized her artistic talents. Inside her apartment, Emma set down the groceries and checked her phone. 3 missed calls from an unknown Massachusetts number. Her heart stuttered in her chest. 10 years of silence broken only by a Christmas card she'd sent to Ethan's address 3 years ago with her phone number scrawled inside. No one had called. If you're invested in Emma's journey of independence and want to see how this family reunion unfolds, hit that subscribe button now. I share stories like these every week that explore the complexities of human relationships. As Emma unpacked her groceries, the phone rang again. The same Massachusetts number. Her finger hovered over the screen before she finally answered. Hello? Her voice sounded strange to her own ears. Emma, is that you? The voice on the other end was deeper than she remembered, but unmistakably, her brother's. Ethan? Emma gripped the counter for support. How are you? There was a pause, filled with 10 years of unspoken words. Emma, it's Mom. His voice cracked. She had a massive heart attack yesterday. She's in the ICU at Boston Memorial. The doctors, they don't think she's going to make it. The world tilted beneath Emma's feet. Images flashed through her mind. Her mother in her blue nursing scrubs, making pancakes on Sunday mornings, teaching Emma how to apply eyeliner, standing in the window as Emma walked away. She's been asking for you, Ethan continued, his voice thick with emotion. Every time she regains consciousness, she asks if you're here. She wants to see you, Emma. She wants to apologize before... He couldn't finish the sentence. Emma sank to the floor, her back against the refrigerator. I can't just drop everything and... She might not make it through the night, Em, Ethan interrupted, no longer trying to hide his tears. Whatever happened between you two, do you really want her last thought to be that her daughter wouldn't come when she called? The memory of their last argument rose like a ghost, the hurtful words, the ultimatum. For years, Emma had clung to her anger like a shield, protecting herself from the pain of rejection. But now, with her mother lying in a hospital bed, possibly taking her final breaths, that anger felt hollow. There's a flight leaving O'Hare in 3 hours, Ethan said softly. I already looked it up. I can pick you up at Logan. Emma closed, her eyes, tears streaming down her face. Text me the flight details, she whispered. I'll be there. What would you do if you received such a life-changing phone call? Share your thoughts in the comments below about reconciliation and second chances. The flight to Boston was a blur. Emma stared out the window at the clouds below, each mile bringing her closer to a past she'd tried so hard to outrun. She thought about Jason, who she hadn't spoken to in 9 years. She thought about the life she'd built for herself, wondering if it had all been to prove a point to a woman who might not live to hear it. As the plane began its descent into Boston, Emma clutched her carry-on bag, inside which was a small photo album she'd kept hidden in her desk drawer, snapshots of birthdays, holidays, and ordinary moments from a life that sometimes felt like it belonged to someone else. There was one picture, dog-eared from handling, of Emma and her mother at a Red Sox game, both wearing matching caps, arms around each other, laughing at some forgotten joke. Emma had spent a decade building walls around her heart. Now, As the RC wheels touched down on Massachusetts soil, she wondered if she had the courage to tear them down. Chapter 3. Reconciliation. The antiseptic smell of Boston Memorial Hospital assaulted Emma's senses as she followed Ethan through the sliding doors. The building itself had been renovated, all glass and steel now, but the underlying scent remained, the same as when she'd visited her mother at work as a child, proudly wearing a visitor's badge, watching in awe as nurses and doctors rushed about saving lives. "She's on the 3rd floor," Ethan said, his voice echoing in the sterile lobby. At 24, he looked so much like their father it was startling, the same broad shoulders and kind eyes, but with their mother's determined jaw. He'd grown into a man during her absence, graduating from college, starting a career in engineering. A gold band glinted on his ring finger, another milestone Emma had missed. In the elevator, Emma's reflection stared back at her from the polished doors, dark circles under her eyes, hair hastily pulled into a ponytail, the weight of a decade's absence heavy on her shoulders. "How bad is it?" she finally asked. Ethan's eyes met hers in the reflection. "The doctors say her heart is too damaged. They've done everything they can, but..." He swallowed hard. "She's been holding on, Em. I think she's been waiting for you." The elevator doors opened to the cardiac intensive care unit where monitors beeped and nurses moved with quiet efficiency. Ethan led her to a room at the end of the hall, pausing outside the door. "She drifts in and out," he warned. "When she's awake, she's lucid, but it doesn't last long. This moment of reunion is what this channel is all about, real human emotions and the healing power of forgiveness. If you want more stories that touch your heart, please hit subscribe now." Emma took a deep breath and stepped into the room. The woman in the hospital bed bore little resemblance to the vibrant, strong-willed mother Emma remembered. Catherine. Matthews looked small against the white sheets, her once dark hair now streaked with gray, her skin pale and papery. Tubes and wires connected her to machines that monitored her failing heart. Emma moved to the bedside, her legs trembling beneath her. She reached out hesitantly, taking her mother's hand in hers. It felt cool to the touch, the skin thin over prominent veins. "Mom," she whispered. Catherine's eyelids fluttered, then slowly opened. For a moment, confusion clouded her gaze before recognition dawned. "Emma," her voice was barely audible. "Is it really you?" Emma nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. "My beautiful girl," Catherine whispered, tears filling her eyes. "You came back." "I'm here, Mom," Emma managed, squeezing her hand gently. Catherine's fingers tightened around hers with surprising strength. "I'm so sorry, Emma. I never should have said those things. Not a day has gone by that I haven't regretted letting you walk out that door. I shouldn't have left like that," Emma confessed, the words she'd held back for 10 years finally breaking free. "I was young and stubborn and..." "Shh," Catherine interrupted, her breathing labored. "We both made mistakes. But I was the mother. I should have known better. Have you ever experienced a moment of forgiveness that changed everything? Share your story in the comments below." Ethan stood at the foot of the bed, wiping tears from his eyes as he watched his family begin to heal, even as they faced the greatest loss. "Tell me about your life," Catherine said, her eyes never leaving Emma's face. "Are you happy?" Through tears, Emma told her mother about Chicago, her career, her small apartment with the view of the L train. She didn't mention Jason or the string of failed relationships that followed, the nights she'd reached for the phone wanting to call home, the birthdays spent alone pretending the silence didn't hurt. "I always knew you'd do amazing things," Catherine smiled weakly. "You were always so determined, so passionate." A monitor beeped more urgently, and Catherine closed her eyes, her breathing becoming more labored. A nurse entered, checking the machines, adjusting something on an IV. She gave Emma a compassionate look. Try not to tire her too much, she advised. Quietly before leaving, Catherine's eyes opened again, finding Emma's. "The box," she whispered. "In my closet. Letters. For you. Every birthday, Christmas. Never sent them." Emma felt her heart breaking all over again. 10 years of silence, but her mother had been talking to her all along, writing words she'd been too afraid to send. "I love you, Emma," Catherine said, her voice growing fainter. "I've always loved you. Nothing could ever change that. I love you too, Mom," Emma whispered, leaning down to kiss her mother's forehead. "I'm so sorry I stayed away so long." Catherine smiled, her eyes drifting closed again. The monitors continued their rhythmic beeping, counting out precious moments as mother and daughter held hands across a decade of absence, speaking without words of forgiveness, regret, and love that had never truly died. Chapter 4. New Beginnings. 3. Days later, Emma stood in her childhood bedroom, sunlight streaming through the curtains her mother had never replaced. The walls were still the same soft blue she'd chosen at 15, covered with posters of bands she no longer listened to and photos of friends whose names she struggled to remember. It was like a time capsule of the girl she'd been, passionate, impulsive, certain she knew everything worth knowing about life and love. Catherine Matthews had defied the doctor's predictions, holding on for 2 more days after Emma's arrival. They had talked for hours in those brief periods of consciousness, about the past, about regrets, about the precious time they'd lost. And then, early on the 3rd morning, with both her children at her side, Catherine had squeezed their hands one last time and slipped away peacefully. Now, sitting on her old bed, Emma held the box her mother had mentioned, a simple wooden chest filled with envelopes, each labeled with a date. 10 years' worth of birthday cards, Christmas greetings, and letters that began with, "My dearest Emma," and ended with, "All my love, Mom." Some were tear-stained, others filled with news of Ethan's achievements or neighborhood gossip, all of them containing the words, "I miss you," and "I'm sorry." If this story of lost time and reconciliation has touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel. These human moments of connection are what life is truly about. "I found this too," Ethan said from the doorway, holding a framed photograph Emma had never seen. In it, her mother stood outside Emma's apartment building in Chicago, smiling nervously at the camera. "She tracked down your address 3 years ago. Stood outside for hours trying to work up the courage to knock. Said she was afraid you'd slam the door in her face." Emma took the photo with trembling hands. "She was there, in Chicago?" Ethan nodded, sitting beside her on the bed. "Twice a year she'd fly out. Never got further than the sidewalk. Too scared of rejection, I guess. We're all so stubborn in this family." Emma traced her mother's face in the photograph, imagining her standing there while Emma went about her life inside, neither of them brave enough to bridge the gap. "So much wasted time. What will you do now?" Ethan asked. "After the funeral, I mean." Emma looked around the room that no longer felt like hers, thinking about her apartment in Chicago, her job, the life she'd built. "I don't know," she admitted. "Everything feels different now." Has a loss ever made you reevaluate what's truly important? Share your experience in the comments below. The next week passed in a blur of funeral arrangements, condolence cards, and casseroles from neighbors who remembered Emma as a little girl. She met Ethan's wife, Lisa, a kind-hearted kindergarten teacher who showed Emma their wedding album and told stories about how Catherine had helped plan every detail, insisting on leaving an empty seat in the front row, just in case. On her last night in Boston, Emma sat on the porch swing her father had built, watching fireflies dance in the yard. Ethan joined her, 2 glasses of their mother's favorite wine in hand. "The house is yours too," he said, passing her a glass. "Mom made sure of that in her will. We could sell it or let's not decide anything yet," Emma replied, watching the neighborhood settle into evening. The Adams family across the street still put out too many Christmas decorations. Mrs. Peterson still tended her prize roses. Some things hadn't changed at all. "I've been thinking," Emma said slowly. "My lease in Chicago is up next month. And there's a branch of my company here in Boston that's been looking for a senior designer." Ethan's eyebrows rose. "You'd move back?" Emma took a sip of wine, tasting notes of berries and oak, her mother's favorite for special occasions. "Maybe. I've missed a lot of years with you. And now there's Lisa, and you mentioned you're thinking about starting a family soon." "Aunt Emma does have a nice ring to it," Ethan smiled, bumping her shoulder with his. If you've appreciated this journey of family reconciliation, please hit that subscribe button. Stories about healing and second chances are what keep us all connected. As twilight deepened into night, brother and sister sat side by side, planning a future neither had imagined possible a week ago. Emma thought about the box of letters upstairs, each one a piece of the mother she'd lost and found too late. She thought about the decade of silence that could never be reclaimed, the milestones missed, the words unsaid. But as she looked at Ethan, the brother who had brought her home, who had kept the door open when everyone else thought it was closed forever, Emma felt something she hadn't expected: hope. Not just the bittersweet consolation of reconciliation at the end of life, but the promise of new beginnings, of family bonds renewed and strengthened. Later that night, Emma stood in her mother's room, taking in the familiar scent of lavender, an antiseptic soap that still lingered. On the nightstand sat a family photo: Emma, Ethan, and Catherine at a Red Sox game years ago, all wearing matching caps. Next to it was a more recent picture of just Ethan and Catherine, with an obvious space where Emma should have been. "I'm home, Mom," Emma whispered to the empty room, placing the Chicago photograph beside the others. "I'm finally home." Outside, a gentle rain began to fall, washing away the heat of the day, preparing the ground for whatever would grow next. Emma Matthews stood at the window of her childhood home, watching the raindrops trace paths down the glass, no longer running away, but moving forward, carrying with her both the pain of what was lost and the precious gift of what remained.